onwards. Okay. So we are discussing. Thank you very much for joining the live class. A very nice evening to all of you. So this is Faisal Ahmed with you with the course Elizabethan drama, right? The course code of which is ENG 410. So we are discussing about the play Macbeth, written by Shakespeare, and we are in Act 3. So let's proceed on from this Act 3 onwards. Right. So we will go through the summary of the text, okay? Act by act, scene by scene. Right. So Act 3, Scene 1. So can anyone recall the previous acts and scenes that we discussed in the previous weeks since we started this play? হ্যালো, আপনারা কি আমার কথা বুঝতে পারছেন? ওকে, আপনারা একটু কিছুটা রেসপন্সিভ। সো যাই হোক, আমি আমার মতো পড়ে যাই, আপনারা শুধু শুনেন। হ্যাঁ, ইউ আর জাস্ট লিসেনার্স, আই থিঙ্ক। So Act 3, Scene 1. So in the previous acts and scenes, we found Macbeth as a military general working or fighting in the war under the rulership or kingship of King Duncan of Scotland. And in the way to returning home, he and Benku, his co-warrior or military general, meet 3 witches who prophesied that Macbeth will be the future king. Okay. But he will be a fruitless crown. And Benku's he will be the next kings. So in the following act, we found that Macbeth killed Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth influenced Macbeth to kill King Duncan to make the prophecy come true. And that happened, but that was a disobedience of the natural law, the law of God, so which eventually make the 2 characters, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, fall into trouble, and that is restlessness, okay, lack of peace and lack of happiness, unrest situation, tension and anxiety in their mind and brain. So which now in Act 3 is not letting them sleep well, not letting them eat well, not letting them think well. Right. So to conceal that murder of King Duncan, they repeatedly doing crime, murder, oppression and suppression over their new subjects after the coronation or after getting into the throne. Right. So let's proceed on Act 3, Scene 1. The royal palace at Forays, Benku faces and thinks about the coronation of Macbeth and the prophecies of the warrior sisters. The witches foretold that Macbeth would be king and that Banquo's line would eventually sit on the throne. If the first prophecy came true, Banquo thinks, feeling the stirring of ambition, why not the second? Macbeth enters, attired as king. He is followed by Lady Macbeth, now his queen, and the court. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth ask Banquo to attend the feast they will host that night. Banquo accepts their invitation and says that he plans to go for a ride on his horse for the afternoon. Macbeth mentions that they should discuss the problem of Malcolm and Donalbain, the two sons of the murdered or assassinated King Duncan of Scotland. The brothers have fled from Scotland to England and may be plotting against his crown. I mean Macbeth's crown. So that's the new thing of trouble, a new thing of tension for Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, right? So Banquo departs and Macbeth dismisses his court. He is left alone in the hall with a single servant to whom he speaks about some men who have come to see him. Macbeth asks if the men are still waiting and orders that they be faced. Once the servant has gone, Macbeth begins a soliloquy. Soliloquy is a technique in drama which the dramatist use to express the inner thought of the character alone. Okay, while there are no characters except the character who express the soliloquy, okay, and the audience only listen to that soliloquy. Okay, so lonely when a single character expresses his inner thought or the conspiracy in his mind, that is called soliloquy in drama. He muses on the subject of Banquo, reflecting that his old friend is the only man in Scotland whom he fears. Who is the old friend? The old friend is Banquo, right? So he notes that if the witch's prophecy is true, his will be a fruitless crown, by which he means that he will not have an age. So you know, I think the meaning of age, okay? The murder of Duncan, which weighs so heavily on his conscience, may have simply cleared the way for Banquo's sons to overthrow Macbeth's own family. So Macbeth is scared or fearing of Banquo that his sons will overthrow Macbeth's own family. I mean, they may kill Macbeth and his family. The servant re-enters with Macbeth's two visitors. Macbeth reminds the two men. So who are the two men? These two men, along with the one, are the hired murderer of Banquo and hired by Macbeth, who is sparing Banquo. Okay, why? Because he also knows the prophecy, right? That his heir will be the next king, whereas Macbeth's heir will not be the king, next future king. So Macbeth is upset about the thing. That's why he is planning or plotting to kill Banquo, his friend and co-warrior, and also the military general. So Macbeth reminds the two men who are murderers he has hired of a conversation he had with them the day before, in which he chronicled the wrongs Banquo had done them in the past. He asks if they are angry and manly enough to take revenge on Banquo. They reply that they are, and Macbeth accepts their promise that they will murder his former friend. Macbeth reminds the murderers that Fleance, who is Fleance? Fleance is the son of Banquo, right? So Macbeth reminds the murderers that Fleance must be killed along with his father Banquo and tells them to wait within the castle for his next command. Act 3, Scene 2. Inside in the castle, Lady Macbeth expresses despair. Despair means loss of hope, right? So expresses despair and sends a servant to fetch her husband. Fetch means call someone to come. Macbeth enters and tells his wife that he too is discontented. Discontented means dissatisfied, right? Saying that his mind is full of scorpions. Full of scorpions means full of poisons, right? I mean, in a very severe tension or anxiety. That is full of scorpions. So he feels that the business that they began by killing Duncan, right? So he feels that the business that they began by killing Duncan is not yet complete because there are still threats to the throne that must be eliminated. Eliminated means remove, right? So who are the threat? Who are the threat for Macbeth's throne? Banquo, that Macbeth thinks, Banquo and his sons. So Macbeth tells his wife that he has planned a deed of dreadful note, right? A deed of dreadful note for Banquo. And Fleance and urges her to be jovial and kind to Banquo during the evening's feast in order to lure their next victim into a false sense of security. So they are maintaining a double standard. That's why Macbeth is telling his wife that they will, okay, they will behave goodly, nicely with Banquo and Fleance, but innerly, okay, they are plotting about their murder. So that is double standard. Act 3, Scene 2. It is dusk. Dusk is the evening time, right? And the two murderers now joined by a third, linger in a wooded path, that means in a forest, outside the palace. Banquo and Fleance approach on their horses and dismount. Banquo the father and Fleance his son. Okay, who are their target? I mean the hired murderer's target to be killed. They light a torch and the murderers set up on them. The murderers kill Banquo, who dies urging his son to flee and to avenge his death. One of the murderers extinguishes the torch. Extinguish means what? Stop the torch. I mean switch off. And in the darkness, Fleance escapes. Escapes means flee. Right, run away from a place. So Fleance escapes. That means he is still alive. Okay. So the hired murderers was unsuccessful to kill Fleance, though they are successful to kill Banquo. Right. The murderers leave with Banquo's body to find Macbeth and tell him what has happened. Act 3, Scene 4. Right. So on stage stands a table heaped with a feast. Feast, I mean, an organization of food for the guests, that is feast. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth enter as king and queen, followed by their court or courtiers of the courtmen and women, whom they bid welcome. As Macbeth walks among the company, the first murderer appears at the doorway. Macbeth speaks to him for a moment, learning that Banquo is dead and that Fleance has escaped. The news of Fleance's escape angers Macbeth. Okay, so Macbeth is angry now. Why? Because his plan is spoiled. Right. If only Fleance had died, he muses his throne would have been secure. But now his plan is disordered. Instead, though, the worm that's fled have nature that in time will venom breed. That's the real dialogue from the text, right? That said by Macbeth about the escaped son of Banquo, who is called Fleance. The worm that's fled have nature that in time will venom breed. Venom is poison, right? Returning to his guests, Macbeth goes to sit at the head of the royal table, but finds Banquo's ghost sitting in his chair. So now, in the ceremony of the feast, okay, in the dining table, one of the chairs, Macbeth is seeing Banquo's ghost, right? But other people are not seeing Banquo's ghost, except Macbeth. So Macbeth is talking to the ghost of Banquo. So that's why the other courtiers, right, could guess that Macbeth is half mad or Macbeth might kill Banquo and the king of Scotland, Duncan. So Lady Macbeth makes excuses for her husband, right? So just hold on for a second. I missed here. Horror struck, Macbeth speaks to the ghost. Right, this is it. Think of horror whenever someone speaks to a ghost or a spirit, like this. Okay. So this is a kind of horror. So horror strike, Macbeth speaks to the ghost of Banquo. Right. Among the guests, the other guests are not seeing the ghost, only Macbeth can see. So which is really horror stricken, and also that helps the other guests to understand or to realize that Macbeth is the real killer of Banquo and also the king Duncan. So which is invisible to the rest of the company. Lady Macbeth makes excuses for her husband. That means she, okay, expresses her excuse that her husband is not in a good situation, her mind is not good, that's why he is talking disordered things. Okay, so his wife asked for excuse from the guest, saying that he occasionally has such visions and that the guest should simply ignore his behavior. Then she speaks to Macbeth, questioning his manhood and urging him to snap out of his trance. Right. So Lady Macbeth now criticizing Macbeth, okay, by saying about his lack of manhood. Right. So that Lady Macbeth is trying to say that Macbeth is not courageous, Macbeth is very upset, so he is not a brave man. So saying these things, she is criticizing her husband Macbeth, the king, present king of Scotland, and the murderer of King Duncan. So the ghost disappears, right? The ghost of Banquo disappears, and Macbeth recovers, right? Telling his company, I have a strange infirmity which is nothing to those that know me. Right. Act 3, Scene 4, page 85 to 86 from the text, quoted from the text. I have a strange infirmity which is nothing to those that know me. This is just to convince the guests, right, that he is not in a good sense of mood or good situation, mental situation. Okay, as he offers a toast to company, however, Banquo's spectre, spectre means ghost, the synonym of ghost, right? Banquo's spectre He appears and shocks Macbeth into further reckless outbursts. So Macbeth again is starting to act abnormally, right, in front of the guest. So continuing to make excuses for her husband, Lady Macbeth sends the alarmed guest out of the room as the ghost vanishes again. So this is like natural punishment to Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, right? As they committed a crime of murder, right? And also a murder of a good human being, a good king, okay, who is very kind to his subjects, who is King Duncan of Scotland. So Macbeth mutters that blood will have blood, right? Blood will have blood. And tells Lady Macbeth that he has heard from a servant spy that Macduff intends to keep away from court behavior that verges on treason. So his next threat that he thinks is Macduff, right? As Macduff is not seen in the court, he also fled to England, right? And make collaboration or coalition with murdered King Duncan's two sons, Malcolm and Donald Bay, right? So they are plotting or planning to take revenge against Macbeth, right? So Macduff intends to keep away from court behavior that verges on treason. Treason means betrayal. Okay, so betrayal in the sense of Macbeth, but he is not a betrayer, rather he is a loyal courtier to King Duncan, though he is treasurer or betrayer towards Macbeth, right? So he says that he will visit the witches again. Who will visit the witches again? Macbeth, to know the future. What is coming next, right? So he says that he will, or Macbeth will visit the witches again tomorrow in the hopes of learning more about the future and about who may be plotting against him. So he resolves to do whatever is necessary to keep his throne, declaring, I am in blood steeped in so far that should I wait no more. Returning or as tedious as gold. Okay, so he is not intended to return to his previous place. Rather, he would like to retain his present position as a king. So he is in blood. That means he is in anger. So to hold his throne, whatever is needed to do, he will do. Okay. So this is the mindset of Macbeth now. So now he became more cruel, okay, to hold back his throne and also to retain his kingship. So Lady Macbeth, the queen, says that he needs sleep. He needs sleep, but sleep is not supporting him. Why? Because this is a natural punishment. Okay. So Macbeth has lost sleep. Macbeth has lost mental peace. And they retire to their bed. Okay, Act 3, Scene 5. Upon the stormy heath, the witches meet with Hecate. Hecate is the goddess of witchcraft. Right, witchcraft is magic. The study of magic or the practice of magic is called witchcraft. Right. So, red light, witchcraft. And Hecate is the goddess of that witchcraft or the practice of magic. And who meet Hecate? The three witches, right? The three witches. Hecate scolds them, okay, criticizes them for meddling in the business of Macbeth without consulting her, but declares that she will take over as supervisor of the mischief. Right. So the rest of the thing will be supervised by the goddess of the witchcraft, who is called Hecate. Right. So she says that when Macbeth comes the next day, as they know he will, they must summon or call visions and spirits whose messages will fill him with a false sense of security and draw him on to his confusion. So Macbeth is being drawn to his super fall or his super tragedy by the witches and the goddess of witchcraft Hecate. Hecate vanishes and the witches go to prepare their charms. Act 3, scene 6, the last scene of Act 3, right? That night, somewhere in Scotland, Lennox, one of the courtiers, walks with another lord, discussing what has happened to the kingdom. Banquo's murder has been officially blamed on Fleance, who has fled. So now the discussion is going on about that son has murdered father. Okay, but that was a misconception. Whereas Macbeth killed Banquo, okay, by hiring some murderers. Nevertheless, both men suspect Macbeth, okay? Both men suspect Macbeth is a murderer, whom they call a tyrant, right? Tyrant is a bad king who is suppressive and oppressive towards his subject. Is called the tyrant king. In the murders of Duncan and Banquo, who already killed the two good people, right? So the Lord tells Lennox that Macduff has gone to England, where he will join Malcolm in pleading with England's King Edward for aid, for help, or for support, right, to fight against Macbeth and get back the throne of England, Scotland. News of these plots has prompted Macbeth to prepare for war. So now in the next scene, in the last scene, we are going to have an oil. Okay, going to have scene of oil. So Lennox and Lord express their hope that Malcolm and Macduff will be successful and that their actions can save Scotland from the tyrant king and the murderer king Macbeth, who is hero and as well as a villain in this drama Macbeth by Shakespeare. Okay, the same person, hero and villain, right? Act 3, scene 1. Sorry, it's analysis already. We did it, so we're gonna skip this. Act 4, right? We are in Act 4 now. Act 4, scene 1. In a dark cavern, a bubbling cauldron hisses and speeds, and the three witches suddenly appear on the stage. So now the scene is with the three witches in the darkness, okay? And also the sound of night, sound of snakes, sound of mosquitoes, and sound of other animals, okay? Like a horrific situation or a very fearful environment, the three witches appears in Act 4, Scene 1. The circle, the cauldron, chanting spells, okay, the words of magic, also the words for prophecy, and adding bizarre ingredients to their stew. Eye of what kind of bizarre ingredients? Okay, now we're gonna know. For their chanting, for their, I mean, magic and also the prophecy, okay? the supernatural power. To get the supernatural power and to produce some supernatural thing, they are chanting spells and adding bizarre ingredients to their stew. Eye of Newton to a frog, right? Wool of bat and tongue of dog, right? So these bizarre ingredients they are adding to their magical boiling water, which is named their stew, right? So these things they are doing, bizarre ingredients they're boiling, and also the chanting spells to produce some supernatural power to get the prophecy or to know the prophecy that they can tell Macbeth, who is going to meet them very soon. Hecate materializes and compliments the witches on their wall. One of the witches then chants, okay, by the picking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. Right. In fulfillment of the witch's prediction, Macbeth enters. He asks the witches to reveal the truth of their prophecies to him. To answer his questions, they summon horrible apparitions. Horrible apparitions. Apparitions are the spirits or ghosts. Okay. So now the three witches called more spirits and apparitions, just to make a horrific environment and also to tell the prophecy to Macbeth, who has now visited or come to the witches, each of which offers a prediction to allay Macbeth's fears. First, the floating head warns him, floating head, okay? A head floating in the water, right? Warns him to beware Macduff. So Macduff is a threat to Macbeth, who may kill Macbeth, right? So Macduff. So the first floating head of apparition or spirit or ghost warns Macbeth to beware Macduff, who already has joined Malcolm and Donald Wayne and also the King of England, Edward, to fight, okay, to plotting a wire and to fight against Macbeth and also to regain the throne of Scotland. So Macbeth says that he has already guessed as much. Then a bloody child appears. Bloody child, a child with blood on his body, right? Is splitted on his body. So that is bloody child. That is also a spirit or ghost, and tells him that none of women born shall harm Macbeth. So this is a very important line in this drama, Macbeth, right? So none women born can harm or kill Macbeth, right? So a person who is not born from women can harm Macbeth. So Macbeth, after hearing this, feeling very happy, right? So next, a crown child, okay, a child wearing a crown, royal crown, right? This is also another ghost. So here, all the characters we find here, all are ghosts who are summoned by the three witches, and also they are supervised by the goddess of witchcraft, Hecate. So now, next, a crown child holding a tree tells him that he is safe until Birnamwood moves to Dunsinane Hill. Dunsinane Hill, the place where Macbeth's royal castle is, right? And Birnamwood is in England. Okay. So where the place of wire is located, right? The wire between England and Scotland. The wire between Macduff, Donald Wayne, Donald Wayne, Malcolm, and also Macbeth, right? And Macduff, Donald Wayne, Malcolm are supported by the King of England, who is called Edward. So this is another prophecy which seems very impossible to Macbeth. Okay, so how come a forest moves, right? So this is impossible or supernatural. So these are the prophecies, right? So two prophecies we have found here, the solid two prophecies. One is none of women born shall harm Macbeth. And the second prophecy is Birnamwood moves to Macbeth is safe. Right. Macbeth is safe until Birnamwood moves to Dunsinane Hill. So these are two prophecies, okay, conveyed by the three witches through some apparitions summoned by them. Finally, a procession of 8 crowned kings walks by. These 8 crowned kings procession also an activity summoned by the witches. They are also ghosts, not the real king, right? Real human being. They are also the ghosts or spirits. So finally, a procession of 8 crowned kings walks by. Right. The last carrying a mirage. Banquo's ghost walks at the end of the line. Right. Here also Banquo's ghost is there. Right. So Macbeth demands to know the meaning of this final vision. What's the meaning of this? In the line, there are so many ghosts of kings, 8 kings, and at the end of the line, there are Banquo's ghosts. What's the meaning? That Macbeth wants to know from the witches, right? But the witches perform a mad dance and then vanish.